So I am here with Dr. Crystal Harden and Stephanie Page and Dr. Stephanie Page, and they're going to be presenting their session, Science for All, Inclusive Excellence in Connecting Scientists to Communities. And I will turn it over to them and let them get started. Thank you for joining us.
All right, I believe I am sharing my screen with you all. Okay, welcome to Science for All, Inclusive Excellence in Connecting Scientists to Communities. The University of North Carolina's Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center has dramatically increased its public access to scientists and broadening their research into communities in North Carolina. What we want to do in this session is really describe for you some of those major initiatives that has happened with Morehead Planetarium and Science Center and kind of go through those with you all. Again, I am Dr. Crystal Harden. I'm the Director of Program and Inclusion Initiatives at UNC's Morehead Planetarium and Science Center. And with me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Stephanie Page. I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Women in Engineering Proactive Network, or WEPAN. And I also serve as the Community Engagement Manager for their NSF Advance-funded STEM Equity Brain Trust called the ARC Network.
So the image that you're seeing here on your screen is actually the Moorhead building on the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We are with you ever on the famous Franklin Street in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We are the first university building that you actually see as you come into Franklin Street. The Moorhead building houses not only just the planetarium itself, but also the UNC Moorhead Observatory, as well as the Moorhead King Foundation. So this building is not all ours. And that'll come into play as we talk about our renovation and new design. And the planetarium had opened in 1949. And over those years, we've had millions of students and teachers and visitors through the doors. We are famous for the US astronauts that have trained in our building during the space race. They were all trained in our theater on celestial navigation. And these were the astronauts that were part of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo missions. Dr. Page will talk a little bit about more of the programs we have at Moorhead, and we'll jump right in.
As Crystal mentioned, there is a definite awe being in the theater, knowing that so many amazing astronauts were trained. You can also go to the planetarium and enjoy many amazing, wonderful shows. The programs include classes for adults and children, special courses for teachers, summer camps for kids. I can absolutely say that my son has enjoyed many of them. After school programs. There are also memberships for the community and public viewing of astronomical events such as stargazing, when there are, for example, when Venus is in view and things like that, and also public lectures. And since 2010, Moorhead has produced the North Carolina Science Festival, which I believe is the largest science festival in the country. Is that right, Dr. Harden?
I think we're still saying that. At one point we were not. At one point we did have that title, yes.
Between traditional on-site offerings and its state outreach, Moorhead serves more than 500,000 people every year.
All right. For the past 15 years, Moorhead has really deepened its connection to scientists through our broader impacts work and just connections with the communities of North Carolina. And we do that through our on-site offerings and opportunities, as well as we have a mission for statewide service per the university. So we have statewide programs that touch all 100 counties of North Carolina, including the North Carolina Science Festival. So but our building space is very limited in exhibit space. So we have to be very nimble. This image is just a snapshot of our broader impacts document that we use on an annual basis. On the UNC campus, researchers and scientists come together for annual meetings about twice a year. They do biannual meetings, and we attend those meetings and we share with our scientists in various departments, a large number of them, this document on how we can meet their broader impacts needs, whether it's from an exhibit in our building, a summer camp opportunity, a science festival event, or more in-depth programming in some of our community engagement initiatives in other counties of North Carolina. The renovation. So let's talk about the renovation for a minute and how this has impacted our work with scientists. We, Moorhead, underwent a major renovation, a $9.2 million renovation during the pandemic. It kicked off, it started actually in March and May of the pandemic. We reopened November of 2020 after the renovation. Now visitors enjoy a wide range of new temporary and permanent exhibits that highlight multiple STEM disciplines. This area in our new renovation, this is called the Gateway Gallery. And it contextualizes Moorhead's work on the UNC campus, UNC's celebration and ties to the space program. This area is the Rotunda area. And so the exhibits here focus on the history of Moorhead and its roots in astronomy. And there are interactives here, as well as you will see the banners. And then this new area is called the Breakthrough Hub. And this is a really cool space because this is where we actually have collaborated with UNC researchers. So all of the exhibits here represent a current researcher doing research on UNC's campus and communicating their research out to the public. So we've worked with researchers in public health, robotics, marine science, and all of this is communicating the work that is happening on UNC's campus, the research that is happening on UNC's campus. And we have put this in a format for public access and public understanding. And so we are really happy about this. So with our broader impacts work, scientists can decide that they want to create an exhibit space, and that becomes part of their broader impacts. All right.
And along with that renovation that creates more current and inclusive spaces, Moorhead has strategically built out core initiatives that inform and leverage our broader impacts work. Next slide. For the Impacts program, which is a statewide science communications program, this is a 4-year project supported by the North Carolina GlaxoSmithKline Foundation. It's focused on recruiting scientists from HBCUs and other minority serving institutions, with 50 STEM professionals trained per year, each participating in at least 3 public events. This has come to 232 scientists, 102 workshops, 224 events, and 47,000 participants. And this is a bit of where my relationship with Moorhead got started. I was a part of what was the precursor for the Impacts program. I was a doctoral student in biochemistry and biophysics at UNC. When the opportunity arose to train in science communication and participate in Moorhead's programming across the state, to use the pun, it was impactful to be able to think about my research in ways that connect with the broader public, and to be an example of a Black woman scientist and HBCU graduate. Engaging with the public gave my research meaning beyond my own pursuit of new knowledge. I was able to support people defining their own STEM identity. And I was very fortunate to be a part of the Hidden No More Science Storytelling Tour. And the main emphasis was to amplify voices and shed light on science stories that are hidden, unknown, and typically in the shadows. We traveled across the state of North Carolina to share the stories of Black women working in STEM. I remember when Crystal first started talking to me about her idea to build on what was happening around the Hidden Figures books and movie. Once again, we were in a place in the country and the world with yet another revelation of marginalized people who were critical to major advancements of humankind. The family of Dorothy Vaughan was so gracious in traveling the state with us and sharing the stories of their mother. They're brilliant women in their own right, and we were able to learn so much from them and through their stories about Dorothy Vaughan and other Black women computers. At each stop, Crystal was intentional and purposeful about highlighting Black, Indigenous, and other men and women of color whose stories were not known to the masses. Hidden No More is one way that Moorhead has used its position to make a statement about the importance of recognizing STEM identity and marginalized communities. Next. Building on the impact of the tour, Crystal and Moorhead wanted to continue to use their position to make a statement. For them, justice includes taking the time and energy to bring forth this history. Expanding to their social media across 100 days, Moorhead featured 100 STEM pioneers and shed more light on these under-recognized people from historically included groups and their impact. Recently, I was in a work meeting with a team member who is Cuban, and I shared the animated short about Carlos J. Finlay that Moorhead created. My colleague, who is not from North Carolina, had never really heard him featured outside of her community. And this was hugely impactful for her. And that just resonates or excuse me, is an example of how impactful it is to continue to recognize these pioneers. The animated shorts on Dorothy Vaughan and Carlos Finlay are available for viewing on Moorhead's YouTube channel. Additionally, Moorhead received a 5-year NSF award. They created the Hidden No More, shedding light on science stories in the shadows, which includes prototypes, traveling exhibits, and storytelling. And so no matter your age or identity, these stories are powerful and they expand our ideas of our own capabilities. And again, speak to that drive from Moorhead to really tell the stories that are typically hidden in the shadows. Next. And the Futures program, which is about connecting STEM storytelling to community colleges, is a 5-year project born out of the Impacts program. And it is a partnership again with the North Carolina GSK Foundation. The work with professional storytellers allows them to develop a SciComm storytelling curriculum and take that to the 58 community colleges across the state, engaging faculty, students, and staff. I was truly inspired to hear about the Futures program. Both Crystal and myself have our homesteads, our family homesteads rooted in North Carolina. We know that our STEM identities are based in our communities and in our cultures and heritages. And so Futures for me is meaningful because it builds on impacts and connects more of the human aspects of STEM through storytelling. Focusing on community colleges means that Moorhead reaches more deeply into the communities across the state to have broader impact. Next. And so what we wanted to do was hold some space for thinking about what it means to do this type of work. I've been very fortunate to watch in awe and learn from people like Dr. Harden and the rest of our team. And we wanted to set up space for those of us here today to have a little bit deeper conversation around what goes into making this type of work happen.
And we wanted to leave some space to talk about the beginning attitudes and mindset, a practitioner's mindset for this kind of work. How does your approach inform the process? What does it really take to do this work? How can it be purposeful? How do you integrate social justice and inclusion into this work with scientists, broader impacts of communities, all those kinds of questions. So we wanted to drop these questions here at the end, and then either open the chat or unmute for conversation. We really wanted to be interactive and have kind of conversation around the work, as well as ask us any questions about what you've seen that we do and how we do it. So I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can do that. And one thing I wanted to highlight that is not in the presentation is that Dr. Page is, she is a first. She's one of those first Black women. She's one of those Hidden No More stories that we had on our tour. And so I want to shine light on the fact that she is the founder and the creator of the hashtag Black in STEM. So if you're on Twitter and you see hashtag Black in STEM, it was created and she is the creator of that hashtag. and is known for that. So congratulations again to Dr. Page, and we celebrate her for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Does anyone have anything they want to share? Or do you have questions for us?
I'm just curious about what kind of feedback you've gotten from the scientists, particularly the ones who participated in creating an exhibit, which I think is fantastic. How did they enjoy that process, which is probably a little bit different than what they're used to?
It is. And so the feedback has been great when they actually come in and see it on display, and they can actually see children and the public interacting with it. But the process is very interesting because scientists, if you've ever worked with researchers and scientists, you know that how they communicate is very different when you have trying to communicate that to an 8th grader or, to certain families. And so we have the process with them about how we want to, what level we want to create their research and communicate that out. But they really enjoy the process, the design of it, the creativity of it. It is a longer process than some of our other activities, but the feedback has been great. They are, I think we have these exhibits you see now are going to be up for about 2 years, I believe. And I think we have 3 more scientists lined up to those exhibits come down, and 3 new ones will go up.
And I can share a little bit from the perspective of not necessarily developing a full standing exhibit, but one of the things that we did as a part of the Impacts program and its predecessor, the Science Communications Ambassadors program, was develop a demo that was based on our research. And so a lot of what we were learning about from Moorhead and from their team is how do people engage with information. So it was thinking about how do we communicate our science in things that are tactile, things that kind of connect to a broader experience that we all have. So there was a lot that I learned around taking what I like to call kind of like the funnel vision of doing research and just kind of taking my excitement for my work and translating that and developing a demonstration that allows people to understand and engage and feel that same excitement that I felt. It was great as a graduate student because at different stages of your career in graduate school, you have to learn to communicate your work to different audiences. So sometimes, even in the context of being in a room full of scientists, how you would talk to your lab and people who know the work from on a day-to-day basis is different than how you would talk to, say, your department and how you would talk at a larger conference. And so for me, it was great because it allowed me to kind of slow down and take a step back and think about all of the information I would need about my audience and really value my audience. And so that made for, I think, a more connected and more deeply engaged experience when I would communicate my science even to other scientists. It actually came in handy when I was defending my dissertation and I had family from all different careers and backgrounds coming in to sit and listen to, 7 years of research. And really, too, what I want to point out is that Moorhead was incredible because I also was doing work in science policy. So going to Congress, going to other spaces to talk about the biomedical research enterprise. This was so incredibly important for me as an experience to go and talk to people who don't do science every day, but who need to understand the importance of value in what we do. So that was another consistent kind of, that experience was something I'd say that was consistent with other graduate students as we were engaging as impactors. And it was also really great because we would connect with faculty who were doing broader impacts work with Morehead. And sometimes we were able to help them in ways that you don't always anticipate as a graduate student. So, yeah.
Other questions, or anyone want to talk about the process that they have, that you have with your organization, or what does it take to really make it work? Anything else anyone wants to share?
I have a quick question, because we've explored this as possible options for broader impacts, like doing a museum exhibit. What was the average cost of each individual exhibit? I may have missed that.
I believe that I have to pull up the current brochure. I believe we asked researchers to put in about, I know it's at least 30,000. That's the minimum amount. We have we go all the way up to a full dome if they want to create a full dome immersive show. We have a cost structure for all of that. But I think exhibits are somewhere between 30, we tell them 30 to 60,000.
Okay, gotcha. I think that's what, well, I think we estimated around 30,000. So I was wondering if that made sense or not. Okay, cool.
Yes, definitely.
Is that coming out of their grants?
Yes, that would what they would.
That's what they would write into like a broader impact statement for NSF.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right.
So I have a sort of follow-up question because I'm interested in the same thing. We also work with faculty on exhibits for broader impacts projects. So I was very interested in how much, you're spending on exhibits and exhibit components. Have you found that there's sort of this threshold that NSF doesn't want to go past to fund things? Because I know, like, I'm currently working with someone and we're trying to decide, how much can you put in toward an exhibit before they think it's too much. Have you run into that with what you've done?
Honestly, we haven't, because normally what we is really interesting. Our biggest challenge is working with the researchers, determining how much they want to incorporate in their budget. Right? What is really their threshold, commitment they want to make to this kind of work. Because we'll have some research that come to us and they only want to put $5,000 or $10,000 towards broader impacts, and they want to know what can we do for that, right? And then you have some others who are really kind of see a different value in it. And a lot of times it depends on that researcher's history with NSF. What we found is how much they've received from other awards, how much they have not only received from other awards, but just kind of their connection to NSF. We have some scientists who are very well known, and they're going to get an award every time. The amounts, it's like no big issue. If I say 30,000, they're like, oh, yeah, sure. But normally that's how we're working directly with the scientists, and we just provide for them the template in terms of this is what it is, this is what it costs, this is what we're going to do. And then they normally go from there and do all the negotiations. And we normally, in terms of Moorhead, we are out of the negotiations once we tell them this is what our cost is. And then they come back and they say, well, I only got 15,000 or 20,000. So then we may have to readjust for that, because we can't do an exhibit for you for 20,000, but we can have all these other things we can do for 20,000. So let's talk about what other things are and how they might fit your need. But we include in our costs, we are very purposeful to make sure that we are including, we're capturing our time, your materials, supply, we're capturing everything. And even some of our back of house costs, our administrative things, we're including that in as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. So then thank you for that. Sort of a follow-up question. How much storyboarding do you do with them in advance in terms of, putting together an exhibit? And then how do you deal with the fact that you don't know what the percentage is going to be in terms of who's getting funded for something, so that you don't overestimate how many people you can put into your space, and then you find out they all get funded and you don't have space for them anymore?
Oh, great. That's great questions. Okay, let me start with the first one. The first one was, repeat the first part for me. You asked me just.
I was asking about just sort of storyboarding, like how much do you actually sort of storyboard, or do you have sort of a canned, like we do a exhibit panel here, we have a vitrine with an object here, or are you more flexible, like we can do this or we can do an interactive, or that sort of thing?
That's a great question. So we have a whole creative design team that includes our person who's director of exhibits. That's a whole different department than my department of programs. And we also have a production team because we produce our own shows. So that's our whole graphics group. So when someone comes to Moorhead and says that they want to do an exhibit, researcher comes and wants to do an exhibit, typically what happens is we are definitely having a lot of conversation before they submit. Now we have a kind of a canned template that they use to submit and kind of drop in their research and that information and what the exhibit would be about. But they come over and they're going to see how our exhibit spaces are designed. So what we're saying is we're not changing kind of the layout. If you want to do an exhibit on microbes, so here's the space that we have. So we give them an idea of here's the space that we have, and this is kind of how we would do it and what we would have and interactive so that they can see it. And then we go with the canned template from there. And then if they receive the funding, then there's a lot of sit down with our graphics folks about actually sketching out and designing, that kind of thing. But it's not that in depth until they receive the funds. And the second part of your question was what happens if they don't?
Yeah, it's really how to deal with the uncertainty, because we run into the same problem. I mean, the likelihood that somebody is going to get funded is 25% or 30% or less than that, depending on the type of proposal. Do you just sort of double or triple the number of proposals, assuming that just some subset of them will go there, or do you wait till you find out if somebody's funded before you let someone else in?
No, we take them all. Anyone if they come up, if they have an idea and it works for Moorhead, we set them out. One time we had 14 happening at one time. That's been our highest number. So yeah, we don't turn anything down. In terms of the exhibit layout, normally what happens though is we'll have a scientist who will say, okay, I've got a 5-year, right? So we may have somebody else that theirs is up for 2 years. And then that second scientist, let's just say it was a space issue. We come along and we start with that person in the 3rd year of their 5-year. Or we think about, okay, we're going to have to do a no cost extension, that kind of. So we really haven't run into any problems with too many and layout and things because of the number of years that the awards go for.
Thank you.
Crystal, it looks like Jeff has his hand up.
Oh,
I don't know if
I'm
you
sorry.
can see it on your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'm sorry, Jeff. I get to talking and I miss things.
No problem. Sorry, I'm eating breakfast, which is why you don't see me right now. I'm curious if, I don't know if either of you are familiar with Emily Dawson's work on sort of how sort of underserved communities sort of feel with respect to their appearance and attendance at science museums. I'm just curious if that has come up at all in your work and sort of how you've handled that.
Oh yeah, we're familiar. Stephanie, you want to hop in?
Yeah, it's we've had some incredible experiences, both in my science communication work with Morehead and even outside of Morehead's programming. We've had the experiences of kids walking up to us in tears. Just the first instance of meeting someone doing the work that we were doing, but also the ability to kind of look someone in their eye and engage with them. The experiences around even when more of the obvious, I'd say, aspects of identity are not the same, or assumed obvious aspects of identity are not the same. Just the experience of some children and families, adults even, from historically excluded and marginalized groups, the experience of there being like zero barrier. You're not asking for permission to be engaged as a scientist. You are a scientist yourself. You're you are having a moment with another scientist, all of that affirmation that happens, when you see that kind of up front, it has a ginormous impact. You know, it even had a huge impact for me as I was going through my career, feeling the isolation and the other aspects of inequity, having the identities that I do. And I'll say too that because of Crystal's leadership, because of so many other people with Moorhead, they value the community first. And that community relationship is what's most important. There is not sort of we're coming in to save, or we're coming in to pour into empty vessels. There isn't that sort of idea and mentality as if the communities that we're going into are somehow at a deficit. It isn't. The reality for us is that these are communities that are rich. There is brilliance here, and we just want people to have an experience to see more of that within themselves. And I think that's hugely impactful when going into different marginalized communities. And I think for us personally, Crystal's from a small town called Wilson, which is maybe 45 minutes from a small town where on my dad's side called Belgrade, and, you know, other side of the state, just over the line, you know, the homestead for my family in South Carolina was started 1 year after emancipation. And so we also are bringing together people who are from these communities. We ourselves are from these communities, and that sense of value and inherent STEM identity is a part of our personal journey. And so it comes out in the work, and you absolutely see it with Crystal and her team when they go out to various spaces. We didn't even get to talk about the Gates Scholar Program, which is an exceptional program because it goes out to rural North Carolina, and it really engages students it follows from middle school through high school, right, Dr. Harden?
Right.
And what that means in terms of building relationship with community and families, to have kind of a longitudinal program, to me is extraordinarily impactful. I'll be quiet because I'll keep going on.
Yeah, I will say, Jeff, that one thing about the work that we do, when you talk about inclusion, equity, and diversity, it is woven into every aspect of our organization. So when we are proud of the fact that we have a third of our staff that are BIPOC. So, you know, that is an amazing informal science education to have a third of your staff that is BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and persons of color. And so we are very purposeful about this work and the identity and how our audiences feel when they experience our programs. And so we don't do one-offs. And we're very purposeful about programs that go out into communities. We go to people where they are, we meet them where they are. And it is a lot about building trust and relationships, as Stephanie mentioned. That is definitely who we are. When we work with scientists, one of the things we tell them, especially about exhibits, I'm very clear and transparent in that your lab is very Eurocentric. If you want me to use images, I need to support that, because the people that are coming to see my exhibits or where they're going, they need representation that looks like them as well. So we have conversations about that and how we can make sure that whatever is going to be put into our building or whatever is going out is representative of the people that are coming into our spaces. Because we want people, we say science for all, and we mean that. We want everyone to feel comfortable and have a representation of themselves, whether we're talking about language issues, accessibility issues, race, identity, race, ethnicity, gender, and so forth. So it is a huge part of our work that we do with broader impacts. And we have very transparent and direct conversations with our researchers about how important that is to us. We've not had any researchers as of yet to push back on how important it is to us. And we weave that in. But I will tell you that it is not something that we negotiate when it comes to that issue. And then there was a question.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I think there was a question in the chat. Did they include student support in that estimation? That estimation for us would be our time, and we probably do include some student time into that. I would have to look back at the breakdown, but I'm pretty sure it includes some. We do include student time because we do have students that work on exhibits as well.
I have a question about representation, which is how do you do representation without taxing the same people over and over again?
It's a great question. So we talk a lot about Moorhead about labor and the labor burden on our BIPOC staff. So just to kind of go back, Moorhead has a inclusion and diversity committee. We have a diversity statement. We have a strategic plan, and we have open conversations. And so we understand, our staff understands that sometimes they are needed for that representation, right? But we also have so many community partners. We have so many relationships that we have built around our organization that are representative of our BIPOC community, that we can reach out to a lot of different partners. So it's not one partner, it's not staff. We also do a lot of cultural competency training for our entire organization, so that everyone on our team is asking the questions about labor and burden, and they're looking at that. They are looking at how we establish all types of relationships in various communities. So we have a whole initiative that happens behind the scenes around the issue of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Hope I'm answering questions. Let's see, Sarah, right?
Yes, and I'm sorry if you've already answered this. As you've seen, I have a little one, so I've been zipping back and forth. But I was wondering, I'm involved with, and here she comes, with an organization that is working with BIPOC students and elementary age students, and is interested in assessing their sense of belonging. They're trying to bring in STEM role models who look like these students that they're working with. And I was just wondering if you found any tools that work really well for that really young elementary to middle school age group to see whether they have that STEM identity and that sense of belonging.
Yeah, I'll tell you two things that we've done. Stephanie, help me remember. Oh my gosh. Okay. Was this for my dissertation? But it's the one of the tools where you have images of young people and you have them circle. You ask the question, who do you think is the scientist in this picture? Or who could be a scientist? And they circle a picture, right? And it gives you an idea of their sense of identity and how they see things. There's also the Draw a Scientist research. That research is still viable. Those type of we still use those type of instruments to this day. But it's just a very simple tool, and I can't remember if you can reach out to me, but Stephanie, you may know off the top of your head, but it's kind of the one where you have the different images of different young people, and you ask various questions. Who do you think is going to be a scientist, or who do you think is a scientist? Who likes science in this picture? And they circle, and it's very interesting. You can get from that.
And actually, this I forgot to point out that I was in the picture. I just had longer hair. I mean, one of the pictures in our slides was when I was presenting for the STEM Symposium as a part of the Science Festival, and basically it is a STEM conference for school age children. I will say that the year that my son attended, he asked me to not participate because the other kids didn't have their parents there. And part of the experience is that independence. And one thing that Moorhead worked with me on when I was developing the talk was we were taking, I had this idea because I wanted to tell this story about how my STEM mindedness didn't come from my formal education. It was already a part of me and how I was raised. And so I started telling this story about my great grandmother, about my Aunt Sadie, who's now 98, and how they were, how they applied STEM, how they did STEM, my great grandfather, like how this was what was a part of their day-to-day lives and who they were. And so working with Moorhead, what we started to do was look for other cultural examples. Around the time, there was a really great sort of mini documentary about how satellites were being built that were actually using, oh my gosh, I lost the word, paper folding, Crystal. Origami. Yeah. So we were, thank you so much. And so we were taking these different examples, like cultural heritage-based examples of how STEM was being innovated around, like how people were taking and developing new approaches. But this is culturally yours. This is your identity. And so we were doing that on different scales so that, you know, someone, a child who was really small, you know, early education stages, all the way up to adults could kind of make that immediate connection. We didn't want it to be too complicated. So some things like that. Also included some aspects of traditional medicine that we've found through research are effective approaches for treatments and things like that. So just sort of taking, again, sort of like that picture of scientist work and connecting identity in that way, but also doing some cultural connection too.
Thank you so much.
Are there social media? There's not a social media account for Futures or Impacts, but you can see we do post a lot of what we're doing with Futures. Futures Impacts ended 2 years ago. We still work with many of those same scientists like Stephani for different things, but the current funded project is the Futures Project, which is science storytelling in our community colleges. And so we do feature that. We do have a website that features some of those videos, and we feature that via Moorhead. Moorhead does have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And so we do have those stories featured, but you can visit our website and we do have a Futures page. So
I'm dropping the link in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Because you know, I'm not fast enough to, I won't figure that out fast enough. And I do want to say one thing, one last thing is, one of the cool things that I've seen happen is when, especially when you're trying to figure out, okay, how to build these relationships with communities and how to bring in relatable things when you're dealing with BIPOC communities. Lots of times it's great to reach out to groups like some communities have Black master gardeners. You may have a scientist whose research is in biology or plants, and then you can reach out to the Black Master Gardeners Club, have them all come in and collaborate on how to do an activity or an event together for the community. If you have someone in physics who's working on something and you really can relate that to engines or things like that. I've seen the fleet have this activity where they showed there was a Latino car club in the community. And they worked with some of the master designers of the car designs, as well as, I guess you would call them, oh my goodness, not service tech, but mechanics, master mechanics, work with them on how to talk about what they're doing with cars and how that relates to science, and having the community and the children see them as STEM professionals because of their knowledge of what to do with engines and the combustions and all that kind of stuff. And so bringing those kinds of groups together, we've done something at Moorhead with food, because in North Carolina, barbecue is the thing, right? You don't know North Carolina, know that barbecue is the thing here in North Carolina. It's a big debate. So we did a thing where we had food scientists come in and talk about food with a pit master. and a pit master actually cooked for us. And so that's one of the kind of events that we did. So those kinds of things are ways of thinking outside, kind of outside of the box.
Mm-hmm.
You have a question?
So along those lines, do you find that it's the folks at Moorhead who are reaching out to the scientists to bring them in? Or have you had any experience of there being like a point person at a university or wherever the scientists are at who you can reach out to say, hey, are your scientists interested in doing this? Could you reach out to them and let them know? That's a role I'm trying to establish for myself. I work for a scientific organization where we have hundreds of scientists, and I'm trying to argue that I could be the point person for organizations like yours, where you could reach out to me and say, we're looking for scientists in our area, and then I could be the liaison to our scientists. I'm also trying to figure out if that's a role that exists anywhere yet, so that I can hold that up to my organization as an example of the benefits of it. So
our university situation is kind of really interesting and cool. So we're seen as the science outreach arm for the university. We're the only informal science center on campus, the only one kind of doing the work that we do. So we have a point person within our team where a scientist, if they have a question about broader impacts, we have that one point person where it all starts with at Moorhead. And then that person decides who needs to come in, who needs to be brought into the conversation. But normally we are participating in their biannual meetings is how we get out the word, and sending out our information to the different departments. And then the scientists end up coming to us when they are ready to submit proposals. They reach out to us first. They just know that we kind of exist. Now, the other camp, we do work with scientists at Duke. And so typically how that has been is that, someone at UNC will say, hey, there's this, I've got a partner over at Duke that's doing da-da-da or needs this, can we include them, that kind of thing. But when it comes to kind of the outside organizations that might be needed in the process to work with the scientists, outside of whether it is a nonprofit, whether it's a community organization or what, yes, Moorhead becomes that person, that organization, that liaison between the scientists and that organization or that community they're trying to reach or trying to get into.
Thank you.
Oh, and I forgot something we didn't talk about, Crystal, just on the question of representation with kids. This just came to mind. Morehead has done a beautiful job too about the imagery that they create. And so they have these amazing videos. I think one was recently retired. I think Grossology was one of my son's favorites. But time and again, the kids in the audience would see the characters who looked like them. They were very intentional about having different personalities, having children of color represented, having different interests, both in STEM and kind of expanded. I remember, I think it was the treehouse, just even looking across the bedrooms and the playrooms of these children, they just brought in so much purposefully that different kids could connect to. And I wanted to make sure to lift that up too, that it can be in the places that kids will notice, but we don't think to have that piece there to connect to the STEM identity.
Yeah, that is very important. Our representation in the shows we create is always constant in there. And the shows that we also lease from other organizations, we look to see what does the representation look like. Funny story, one of the shows that is called Solar System Odyssey that our team created, one of the lead characters is this little girl, and maybe she's middle, she's not a little girl, but she's probably high school, supposed to be high school age. And at the time when she was created, she was wearing my sorority colors, and I had the exact same hairstyle. And so I went to our designer and I was just like, oh my gosh, like you created her, I thought I was the inspiration. And he was like, oh, and I wasn't. And he was like, no, it's supposed to be Rihanna. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, well, I'm like, do you think I look like Rihanna? Like, so it was a funny story, but he was trying it was really cool. And here I had this white male, and his inspiration for this, young lady on the screen was a Black woman, was Rihanna. And I thought that was really cool. And they were purposeful in this show because it was supposed to be very futuristic. They didn't want there to be clear identity representation because they felt like in the future, we were at a time where everything was so white and Black. They wanted to be a child, regardless of what shade, color of skin they came in to see the show, that they felt like it could be them. And if you see the show, you'll understand how they did that, just with tones of skin color, how they made that possible. So it's really cool. Well, if we don't have any other comments or questions, we will thank you all for coming to our session and participating.